Malaysia and Singapore sign MOU on special economic zone. Government mulls incorporating palm oil harvesting into TVET programs. Good evening and Salam Malaysia Madani. You're watching Malaysia Tonight. I'm Otto Othman. The proposed Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, or JSS, is starting to take shape with the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between Malaysia and Singapore today. Earlier, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim and his Singapore counterpart, Lee Hsien Loong, witnessed the signing of the MOU by Economic Minister Rafizi Ramli and Singaporean Minister for Trade and Industry, Gan Kim Yong. The JSS is expected to further boost trade between Johor and Singapore and could flourish like the Chinese city of Shenzhen, a success story of a special economic zone. Both countries are partnering each other to create the special economic zone adjacent to the Singaporean border to foster stronger business connections and improve connectivity between the two countries as the Southeast Asian region strives to counter a global economic slowdown. The Special Economic Zone is also expected to improve the business ecosystems of both the Iskandar Malaysia region and Singapore. Last year, Johor secured 70.6 billion ringgit worth of foreign investments in various sectors. Singapore is the state's second largest foreign investor, contributing to around 70% of Johor's total foreign direct investment in the manufacturing sector. On another note, Datuk Seri Anwar said the opposition is unable to muster support for a vote of no confidence in Parliament. The PKR president added that it had been a year since the formation of the unity government and yet no such motion were brought to Parliament.
Dah lama dah kita bawa, dia tak bawa, setahun dah. Hari-hari kita tunggu, tak ada. Jadi kita tak ada fikir bab tu. Saya tidak fikir dia ada kekuatan untuk bawa ini selain daripada propaganda untuk menipu penyokong-penyokong dia supaya jangan hilang semangat.
He said this after meeting Port of Tanjung Pelepas management and workers at Iskandar Puteri today. Datuk Seri Anwar also said the Dubai move was nothing but a desperate ploy by those losing support. Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Bin Ayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah decreed the government to expedite the implementation of the flood mitigation projects planned in Pahang and not to politicize these efforts.
Tebatan banjir yang mana telah pun dirangka oleh pihak yang berwajib di seluruh negeri Pahang, saya harap janganlah berpolitik dalam hal ini, seleloknya secara serius dan secara urgent untuk membina tebatan-tebatan banjir di seluruh negeri Pahang.
His Majesty said this when visiting the flood evacuees at the Temporary Relief Centre at Dewan Semai Bakti Felda Chini 1 in Pekan today. Pahang Regent Tengku Hassanal Ibrahim Alam Shah was in attendance. In his royal address at the centre, Al-Sultan Abdullah also reiterated that prompt implementation of those projects should be taken seriously by the responsible parties for the sake of the people's well-being. The king also expressed his sympathy to the flood evacuees and hoped they could return to their respective homes as soon as possible. The government is satisfied with the work progress of the Rapid Transit System, or RTS Link project between Johor Bahru and Singapore and is confident that the transport system will be fully operational on 1st January 2027. Transport Minister Anthony Loke said the two countries are committed to making the multi-billion ringgit project a success, with discussions held periodically between both parties. Meanwhile, Loke said the construction of the RTS Link marine viaduct between Johor Bahru and Singapore is 68% completed.
The terrestrial viaduct, which was awarded on 22nd of March last year, is now full swing and the progress is currently 31%. The station is 41% completed with the construction of the CIQ building, and the CIQ building is right now completed piling works, and the progress of the superstructure stands at 3.2%. So all these are good progress and according to the schedule. And as I mentioned, this is something that we have committed.
Regarding the RTS Link fare, Lok said it would be competitive to ensure travelers from both countries enjoy a seamless journey because it will cut down traveling time as immigration clearing will be done at one station, which is the main convenience of the RTS Link. Still ahead in our business segment, Malaysia to continue wooing global EV brands. The Plantation and Commodities Ministry is considering incorporating palm oil harvesting into technical and vocational education and training TVET programs to address labour shortages in the sector. Minister Datuk Sri Johari Abdul Ghani said this would address the issue of insufficient harvesting in palm oil plantations, leading to the industry incurring billions of ringgit in losses due to unharvested palms. Combined with the Malaysian Palm Oil Board's MPOB mechanised harvesting, he said the move should help address the labour shortage, adding that industry stakeholders should recognise harvesters as a profession and their pay should not be comparable to those of foreign workers.
Now, kerja-kerja biasa ni semua orang boleh buat, tapi harvesting ni is something that kita tak ada lagi profession tu. Pasal industri ni 5.6 juta hektar kan. So jadi kita was looking at kalau tak ada kerja, so I ingat kita kalau TVET boleh introduce khusus untuk mengajar anak-anak muda ni daripada dia habis apa ni dia punya TVET ni, dia boleh buat harvesting. Tapi TVET ni khusus khas untuk harvesting.
He was met after delivering his keynote address at the Palm Oil Economic Review and Outlook Seminar 2024. He said despite some initial obstacles, the labour situation was gradually improved with the reopening of Malaysian borders, resulting in a slight increase in crude palm oil production in the latter part of 2023. The price outlook for palm oil remains optimistic this year, with an expected average trading price of 4,000 ringgit per tonne. The Malaysian Palm Oil Council MPOC said the positive projection is rooted in the shifting supply and demand dynamics in Indonesia, which is moving towards a negative growth pattern following the implementation of B35 or 35% palm oil-based biofuel and 65% diesel in August 2023. The MPOC is forecasting a deficit of 0.24 million tonnes in Indonesia's palm oil supply, as domestic consumption for biodiesel and food is expected to increase by 0.64 million tonnes, with no expected growth in production. It noted that the deficit could further expand if exports exceed the forecasted levels. Meanwhile, the MPOC said Malaysia's palm oil stocks declined 4.64% to 2.29 million tonnes in December last year, reaching their lowest level in 3 months, in line with a trend in palm oil production. It added palm oil production in the fourth quarter of last year surged to its highest level since 2018. Rising to 5.27 million tonnes from 5.11 million tonnes, compared with the corresponding period in 2022. The production trend observed during the period is expected to persist into the first quarter of this year. Therefore, it is projected that Malaysian palm oil production in 2024 will see a growth of 1%, reaching 18.75 million tonnes. Malaysia, which has attracted leading American multinational Tesla to set up its regional headquarters in the country last year, plans to woo more companies like the electric vehicle EV giant to set up assembly plants. Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz said the end game is to have the likes of Tesla build their plants in the country. He said currently, many electric vehicle makers are procuring components from Malaysia in the billions, and added that Malaysia is doubling down on the semiconductor industry to tap the growing EV market. He also said that EV makers want to realign the supply chain to ensure that the security and resiliency of their supply chain is there, so they are coming closer to Malaysia. Speaking to a business news channel, the minister noted that the goal is for EV makers to expand their presence in the country, pointing out that Tesla is already one of Malaysia's major charging station providers, while some of the largest Malaysian companies are also Tesla suppliers. He also believes that EVs would be the catalyst for the growth of Malaysia's manufacturing industry exports. Elaborating further, he said electrical and electronic products is a vital part in the EV supply chain. The Human Resources Ministry is committed to speeding up improvements and management and coordination aspects of policies involving foreign workers. Now, this is to ensure they are more effective. Its Minister, Stephen Sim Chi Keong, said that the matter would be decided at a meeting with the Home Ministry on 16th January.
Peranan KSM ni amat jelas dan itu diperakui oleh Kementerian Dalam Negeri, iaitu peranan kita ialah untuk mengawal ataupun menguruskan perangkaan bilangan pekerja asing yang dibenarkan di negara kita dan juga sudah tentu isu-isu berkaitan dengan pekerjaan dan tempat tinggal dan sebagainya, hak pekerja. Jadi itu peranan kita.
The minister also said that among the things that will be detailed in the joint meeting with the Home Ministry are efforts to improve any gaps and coordinate the policies of the two ministries so that the issue of foreign workers is better managed. On Tuesday, Home Minister Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail reportedly said that a meeting with the Human Resources Ministry will be held on 16th January to work on a formula for a more effective management of foreign workers. Commenting on the claims that more than 500,000 foreign workers might be abandoned and left jobless in the country, Stephen Sim said that the ministry took an open stance on claims by the National Association of Private Employment Agencies, Malaysia. SME Bank aims to approve 2.5 billion ringgit in financing for over 1,000 small and medium enterprises SMEs this year. Group President and Chief Executive Officer Dato' Wira Arya Putra Ismail said the SME Bank had approved 2.7 billion ringgit in financing last year, with around 90% directed towards SMEs. Dato' Arya identified key sectors for targeted financing, including technology, healthcare, construction and services sectors recognized by the government for their high growth potential. Additionally, SME Bank aims to prioritize entrepreneurial empowerment programs in 2024, expanding markets globally, including the United Kingdom and Europe. Dato' Arya said in every interaction with SMEs in the market, the bank's approach encompasses various facets. Firstly, financing. Secondly, capacity building. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives, Dato' Ramanan Ramakrishnan, said the total approved growth target for this year is expected to be around 3.5 to 4 billion ringgit. He also applauded the bank for its collaborative efforts to enhance the number of registered social enterprises in Malaysia through a strategic partnership with the Centre for Entrepreneur Development and Research, Sentiran Berhad. The Industrial Production Index IPI, which measures the real output in the manufacturing, mining and electric industries, registered a marginal increase of 0.6% in November 2023 year-on-year. The Department of Statistics Malaysia, or DOSM's chief statistician, Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin, through a statement released today, said the modest expansion of 1.9% in the mining segment and 4.2% in the electricity sector contributed to the IPI uptrend. However, he said the manufacturing sector output turned negative 0.1% after 2 consecutive months of positive growth. On a month-on-month comparison, Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair said the IPI contracted 0.9% as compared to the 1.9% growth recorded in October last year. He said the performance was in line with the country's export performance, which had been trending downward since March 2023 and recorded a negative 5.9% in November. He said the export-oriented industries slipped by 2.2% compared to the preceding month. On the other hand, the chief statistician said the domestic-oriented industries remained resilient by registering an increase of 5.8% in November last year. For the 11 months of January to November 2023 performance, he said the IPI rose at a slower rate of 1%, compared to 7.1% in the same period in 2022. On another note, Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair said Malaysia's wholesale and retail trade recorded a sales value of 142.6 billion ringgit, up 6.2% year-on-year in November last year. He said the increase was driven by the wholesale trade subsector, which rose 6.2% or 3.7 billion ringgit to 63.2 billion ringgit. Elaborating further on the matter, through a statement released, he said retail trade also expanded to 4.4% or 2.6 billion ringgit to 61.3 billion ringgit, followed by motor vehicles, which a double-digit growth of 12.7% or 2 billion ringgit to settle at 18.1 billion ringgit. He said that for monthly comparison, the marginal increase of 0.2% from the previous month was contributed by retail trade, which went up 1.2%. Looking at the performance across subsectors, Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair said the growth of 6.2% year-on-year in wholesale trade was contributed by other specialized wholesale, which grew 9.3% to 24.2 billion ringgit. For the retail trade subsector, the increase of 4.4% year-on-year in the month was supported by retail sales in non-specialized stores, which grew 6.5% to 23.4 billion ringgit. The chief statistician noted that the year-on-year growth of 12.7% for the motor vehicles subsector in November last year was fueled by sales of motor vehicles, which surged 13.5% to record 10 billion ringgit. The Securities Commission Malaysia SC has announced the appointment of Tan Sri Abu Samah Nordin as the non-executive chairman of its Audit Oversight Board, or AOB, effective 5th January this year. Tan Sri Abu Samah succeeds Dato' Anantam Kasinathar, who had completed his 3-year term as the AOB's non-executive chairman on 30th November last year. He has more than 40 years of experience in various capacities in the government agencies and judicial services. He was appointed as Judicial Commissioner at the Commercial Division of the Kuala Lumpur High Court in 1994, before becoming the High Court Judge of the Commercial Division in 1996. He then served as the High Court Judge in Kuantan, Shah Alam and Malacca between 1997 and 2003. And later became the judge at the Criminal Division of the Kuala Lumpur High Court in 2007. He was elevated to the Court of Appeal in the same year and the Federal Court in 2013, before retiring from judicial service in 2018. The SC said Tan Sri Abu Samah's background and experience will further enhance the efficiency of the AOB's oversight rule and foster trust in the quality of audited financial statements in Malaysia. Japan's Nikkei share average reached its highest since February 1990 as a weaker yen buoyed exporters and caution over an impending hike by the Bank of Japan continued to fade on the back of a weak wage data. The Nikkei was up 1.94% at 35,110.52 by the midday close. The index was on track for a third straight day of gains and closing it on its largest weekly rise since late March 2020. The strong earthquake that hit Western Japan last week and weak wage growth data are forcing market participants to reprise when the Bank of Japan will normalize its monetary policy. workers' real wages shrank for a 20th straight month in November, confounding officials' wishes to see wage gains before tightening policy. That wage data gave the Nikkei the excuse to rise towards that 35,000 level. The yen fell 0.9% on the US dollar overnight in the wake of the data and was hovering around 145.56 per dollar in morning trade. A weaker yen tends to support exporter shares, increasing value of overseas profits in yen terms when firms repatriate them to Japan. Japanese stocks also got a boost from a good day on Wall Street as mega caps rallied. SMC Corp's 5.07% gain led the top performers, followed by Itochu Corp at 4.83% and Hitachi Limited at 4.58%.
Argentina and the International Monetary Fund announced an agreement to release $4.7 billion as part of the debt restructuring plan for the troubled South American giant.
Latin America's third biggest economy is on its knees after decades of debt and financial mismanagement, with inflation surpassing 160% year on year and 40% of Argentines living in poverty. The package is still subject to approval by the IMF Board of Directors. With this accord, new President Javier Milei puts back on track a $44 billion bailout package with the IMF that dates back to 2018. The outgoing administration of Alberto Fernandez renegotiated the loan, but the recession that accompanied the COVID-19 pandemic and a severe drought this year made it difficult for Argentina to meet the targets agreed with the IMF. The new accord was agreed during a review of that loan package. The libertarian Milei has taken steps to fulfill his campaign promise to slash public spending and shake up an economy riddled with inflation and other woes. Milei also presented to Congress last month a package of modifications to laws that will allow the privatization of more than 40 public companies and will limit the right to assembly and demonstration.
The world added 50% more renewable energy capacity in 2023 over the year before, predicting booming growth in the next 5 years.
The International Energy Agency said the amount of renewable energy capacity added to energy systems around the world grew by 50% last year, reaching almost 510 gigawatts, with solar PV accounting for 3/4 of additions worldwide. It said, according to a report, the largest growth took place in China, which commissioned as much solar PV in 2023 as the entire world did in 2022, while China's wind power additions rose by 66% year on year. The increases in renewable energy capacity in Europe, the United States, and Brazil also hit all-time highs. The agency's chief Fatih Birol said the report showed that under current policies and market conditions, global renewable capacity is already on course to increase by 2.5 times by 2030. Birol said onshore wind and solar PV are cheaper now compared to new fossil fuel plants, as well as existing fossil fuel plants in most countries. He said the most important challenge for the international community is rapidly scaling up financing and deployment of renewables in most emerging and developing economies.
Coming up in our foreign segment, the UN court hears South Africa genocide case against Israel. Top UN court opened hearings in a case in which South Africa demands an emergency suspension of Israel's military campaign in Gaza, where the regime is committing genocide against Palestinians.
The International Court of Justice will hear South Africa's arguments today and Israel's response to the allegations tomorrow. It is expected to rule on the emergency measures later this month. The court will not rule at that time on the genocide allegations, as those proceedings could take years. The court's decisions are final and without appeal, but the court has no way to enforce them. In its court filings, South Africa cites Israel's failure to provide food, water, medicine, and other essential humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian enclave. It also points to the sustained bombing campaign, which has killed over 23,000 people. South Africa and Israel are both parties to the 1948 Genocide Convention, which obliges them to not commit genocide and also to prevent and punish it. The treaty defines genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group.
Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister pledged to crack down on lawlessness following riots in which 15 people were killed as angry crowds torched buildings and ransacked shops.
Violence erupted in the capital Port Moresby on Wednesday evening after a group of soldiers, police officers and prison guards launched protests against the government. Looters in the capital dashed into stores through smashed glass windows, stuffed stolen goods into cardboard boxes, shopping trolleys and plastic buckets. Buildings and cars were set alight, stirring up thick plumes of black smoke that hung over the worst-hit parts of the city. Port Moresby's largest hospital treated 25 people with gunshot wounds, as well as 6 people with bush knife lacerations. Within hours of riots had also taken root in the city of Lae, some 300 kilometers to the north. Prime Minister James Marape apologized to the country, saying the bursts of lawlessness would not be tolerated. The burst of violence highlights the often volatile nature of life in Papua New Guinea, a country plagued by poverty and high levels of crime. Although it is blessed with vast deposits of gas, gold, and minerals, human rights groups estimate that almost 40% of its 9 million citizens still live below the poverty line.
Moving on to sports, professional men's doubles pair Ong Yu Sin and Teo Yi treated the local badminton fans at the Axiata Arena with a sizzling performance to upset world number 5 Kim Astrup and Andres Skarup Rasmussen 21-10, 11-21, 24-22 en route to the 2024 Malaysian Open quarterfinals. Ranked 12 in the world, Yeo Yi put up a strong start to win the first game despite Yi not having fully recovered from a right knee injury. But the Danes quickly rebounded to level the tie in their second round match. With everything to be decided in the third game, Yu Sin Yi showed their grit to claw back from 5 points down to draw level at 12-all, then fought point to point before finally notching the win after a 61-minute battle. In the quarterfinals tomorrow, they will face 2022 edition champions Takuro Hoki and Yugo Kobayashi of Japan. Well, that concludes this evening's Malaysia Tonight. In our top story, Malaysia and Singapore sign MOU on special economic zone. Do tune in to World Today coming up tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. on TV2. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Otto Othman. Thanks for watching.